Is retired Colonel Gary. I never heard the Gary part before. All I knew was Mickey. Gary Mickey Riggs, a decorated Army veteran and former commander of the WKU ROTC program. Mickey Riggs played football for beloved coach Jimmy Fikes. He earned 2 degrees from WKU, a bachelor's degree in 1958 and a master's degree in 1974. Colonel Riggs is credited with saving a faltering WKU ROTC program that under his leadership grew from 63 to 432 top quality cadets and was recognized as a top 4 ROTC program in America. That program remains strong today, and it's one of the programs of which I am very proud. We have a couple hundred great cadets. We commission 40 or 50 every year that go into the Army as second lieutenants, and I know our nation is strong because of what we're helping to produce on this campus through a program that you helped strengthen, Mickey. We're grateful for your legacy. Now please direct your attention to the screen as we honor the military service and life contributions of our very own Hilltopper hero, Colonel Mickey Riggs.
A decorated military veteran, former commander of the WKU ROTC program, athlete and soldier. Colonel Gary Mickey Riggs' professional persona belies a true family man whose success he attributes to the strength and support of his family, his team.
We have a thing in coaching football, kind of what we've lived on for our entire career. It's called the team, the team, the team. And it's not always the football team that you coach. It's the team that you associate yourself, family, friends. And I don't know of a greater team than Margaret and Mickey Riggs. If you walk into their house, you see their legacy. And their legacy is family. Their legacy is friends. Their legacy is country. Their legacy is Western Kentucky University.
Growing up in Virginia, the athletically talented Riggs played track and football as an All-American. He married his high school sweetheart Margaret and headed to North Carolina to play ball. The financial responsibility of a family with a baby on the way forced a move to Bowling Green and WKU to play football, work, earn an education, and along the way, experience the support of a university family. Colonel Riggs fondly remembers how WKU officials made it possible for him to attend his stepfather's funeral.
And when he died, I was in school here, and I didn't have a red cent other than what Margaret made. And I think they give us $15 a month on a scholarship for your laundry and stuff. And our president and Georgia Bates, his secretary, called me up to the office. I had no clue. We didn't have a telephone. Dorms didn't have telephones in those days. And told me what had happened. And she had tickets, train tickets for us. And Kelly, Dr. Thompson, I don't know, they give us $200 so we could come home to my stepdad's funeral. And that impacts you.
Riggs completed a Bachelor of Science degree in English in 1958. He joined the Army in 1960 as a member of the elite Green Berets, now known as Special Forces, completing 4 combat tours in Vietnam and Laos. Retired Colonel John D. Wagelstein met Riggs in basic training as second lieutenants at Fort Jackson, South Carolina, where they came nose to nose fighting over responsibility for lost compasses. From that point forward, the two shared a handful of duty tours and remained cherished friends. He lauds the humility, loyalty, and command Riggs displayed in all of his missions, recounting one operation in particular in Puerto Rico during unrest in Panama.
It's a big operation. Well, Mickey is running back in Panama, and he's coordinating all the teams that are going to come up and meet these requirements that the Puerto Ricans and the people in the Virgin Islands have asked for. And so he ran this thing and put teams on airplanes and put them in and got all these missions done in we were up there for about 2 months. So I mean, when you know he's back there pushing the teams out, getting them prepared, and putting them on planes and making sure they know where they're going, you don't worry about it. You know, like one of my friends said about Mickey, says if he's on your flank, you don't worry about that flank. You just know you can set your watch by him or take it to the bank.
Riggs and his growing family returned to Bowling Green, where he completed a master's degree in education in 1974. Now, at the end of the Vietnam War and with a divided country, former WKU President Dr. Dero Downing was faced with losing the school's ROTC program. He reached out to then Major Riggs for help. Without hesitation, Riggs accepted the challenge, cleaned house by enlisting the aid of some of his former colleagues in Special Forces, and it was mission complete.
Made a plan, and we followed it, and we wound up 3 years later with from 63 kids to about 420, 30. We were the top program in our region. There's 4 regions. So we had a great time here on the Hill.
I bet you could take 10, 20, 30 names of men who were in the ROTC program who went on to serve significant role in our armed forces that were brought into the program because of Mickey and his tremendous love for country, tremendous love for serving our country, and that name would read like a who's list.
And when I see those young men and women and see what they've accomplished and the awards they win, the scholarships that they get, and to know that they're going out to serve our country for me, and I think we would have been so wrong to have done away with a department that is so important still today.
A distinguished career with the Army continued after his tour with WKU ROTC, commanding the 3rd Brigade, 2nd ROTC region at Fort Knox, and later the Fort McCall Training Facility at Fort Bragg, where all special forces are trained. He also commanded forces in Panama and Venezuela, where he led a number of classified clandestine operations in foreign countries.
It was a challenge. It was a little, in those days, a lot off the beaten path. And it was not career enhancing. If you were an infantry officer, a regular Army officer, and you went in Special Forces, you were expected to maybe pull one tour and then go back to the, quote, real Army. And neither Mickey or I did that because we decided to go to the sound, literally to the sound of the guns, what was much more fun anyway.
Riggs and his late wife, Margaret, kept their commitment to retire to Bowling Green, where the couple remained staunch supporters of WKU and its athletic programs, and where once again Colonel Riggs played a key role in saving a university program.
And then in 1992, we were faced with the crisis of football being lost here in Western Kentucky. We were told that afternoon, a Friday afternoon in April, end of March, early April, that football was gone. Crushed, had no idea it was coming. So we tried to call the 3 amigos, Jimmy Fikes, Butch Gilbert, and we found them at Mickey Riggs' house on a Friday evening and told them what had happened. And they dug their heels into the ground. And this was not going to happen on their watch. And 1 month later, we picked up 1 vote and kept football.
Colonel Riggs' decorations include multiple Purple Hearts for combat wounds, the Legion of Merit, Meritorious Service Medals, and a number of domestic and foreign awards for bravery and service. With all of his accolades, awards, and honors, Colonel Riggs remains proudest of his family. He and his wife of 59 years, 11 months, and 18 days raised 3 boys and have 5 grandchildren.
I mean, they were linked. I mean, they were totally linked in spirit. And they were linked in family, as they say. They were linked in friends, and they were linked in country, and Western Kentucky University. I mean, they were linked in life.
2014 WKU Hall of Distinguished Alumni inductee, Colonel Gary Mickey Riggs.
Well, I tell you, I feel very honored today. I just did my job, but I love Western. My wife and I grew up here. My oldest son, Gary Jr., and my other two boys, their mama and I told them they could go to any school that we could afford to send them, as long as it was in Bowling Green, Kentucky. I'm proud of my kids. They all attended this school, and they all did a great job. My youngest, or my oldest rather, Gary Jr. is a doctor. My youngest son, Michael, is a chef with a doctorate degree. And my second son, who was his mama's baby, is a graduate. We came to everything we could here through the years. And Dr. Downing and his gang are partly responsible for my love for this place. My kids grew up here and all over the world, actually. We went to a lot of assignments. I left here and went to Ranger, Airborne, all the good things you needed to be in Special Forces. Spent 27 years with them. We served in Latin America, Middle America, Africa, England, and she was the boss. I found that out about 15 minutes after we got married. And my dad died here, my stepdad, great guy, Jewish, loved us to death and took care of us when we were kids. My guy that I worked for in the summertime at the YMCA beach in Virginia, his brother was a line coach here. He said, you can go there and get a good education, or maybe better than you could at Duke, where I was at. And I had to do that because when you got a little one and you're 19 years old, your most important thing in your life is your kid and your wife. So I came out here and they offered me a scholarship. I'd been an All-American freshman at Duke University. But I fell in love with this place, big time. It's Georgia Bates and President Kelly Thompson. Some of you all remember that group. They got us a place to live in Vet Village in a trailer. That was my part of the scholarship system. That was instead of a room up in the halls where the teams lived. They got my wife a job at Holly, and I got to sweep out the dorm every day for Coach Diddle. And then inspected, he said, that's pretty good, Riggs, but you got to do better. But the 3 years that we were here were the best times of our life. We met a lot of people, played ball for Nick Dennis, great coach here. Ran track Trousseau. My greatest game in my life was against Murray. Dear old Murray, Mr. Diddle called him. He hated him. I don't know why. He would come down and talk to us, and he'd look in my eyes and say, Riggs, you better do good, or I'll cut you out of my will. So my senior year here, he'd give us the same thing, and I had my greatest game against Murray. 4 touchdowns and 1 call back, and Mr. Diddle was on the bench. He's a basketball hero, but he just, because it was dear old Murray, and if there's any Murray people out here, hey, I didn't hate Murray, I despised him. And I went into Army ROTC because it paid $21.75 a month, which paid the milk bill for my oldest boy, Sonny. And I told my guys that their mama and I would send them to any college they wanted to go to, as long as it was in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So they all went, all continue to be loyal to it. After my graduation in 1958, we went to Fort Bragg, went through Ranger and all the good stuff you had to do, and went to a group of tryouts for the special operations guys. 50 of them officers, they had them separated in those days. 3 of us made it. And I was proud of that. Stayed in Special Forces for 27 years, all over the world. 7th group at Fort Bragg, which is my mother group. 8th in Panama, 1st on Okinawa, and 5th in Nam, Vietnam, during my time. I spent time in Laos, Cambodia, North Vietnam, in the Canal Zone. My very best friend in the world, John David Wagelstein, he's retired as I did with a colonel rank, is here today. And we went on a lot of missions that nobody wants to talk about. We were ready to go into Cuba when our airplanes went down in there. And President Kennedy said, no, don't go, because they said if you go, the intelligence guys had picked up the intercepts from Castro. They were going to shoot our guys. That's the way war is. Some of you have served, so you know that bad guys don't mess around with you. And we were in submarines ready to land and called us back. Many years later, after a lot of missions together with Wagelstein, and a dear friend who's gone now, Scotty, we got together again in Bolivia. He was in the combat unit. I was in the headquarters. And we got Che Guevara. Worked hard, got transferred back to the Canal Zone, commanded a group there. I was a major. Majors didn't command groups, but I got it. And I worked out of division headquarters in Santa Cruz, Bolivia. My family was with me. I took them. I'd been in Vietnam for 15 years almost. And on this tour, I was gone for 14 months. And my boss lady said, hey, Riggs, we're going with you. So she did. My boys went to a military State Department school. There were other oil people there, and they were blowing up our rigs and whatever, our boil rigs. My kids are all here, Sonny, Mike, and my boy Tim. They're all graduates of Western Kentucky because that's where we taught, as I said. We said you can go to any school as long as it's in Bowling Green. And they did that. And I'm proud of them. I've got 5 grandkids, 1 grandgirl, 1 girl. She's beautiful, and she married a great guy. And if you all don't mind, I'd like for my guys to stand up so you can see them with their wives. You got to stand up, Mike, Liz. When I came back to get a master's program, the Army sent me, and you could go in those years to your alma mater. So we came here. We had 62 cadets. You heard it on the screen. And left here with over 400. We produced 5 generals out of that group. I went with my dear friend Jim Fikes on his recruiting trips. He didn't have the gas money, so he said, "You go with me and you recruit for your system and I'll get my football players." And we did that. Our program, when I came here as a professor of military science, had a bunch of golf players, and they weren't doing it. We had 63 kids. We're going to take it away from Western. DA, Department of Army, said, "Hey, we can't afford that cadre down there, and we're going to come under, guess who? Eastern, Mr. Diddle's hated enemy." And when I left, my guys, I went to Bragg and got a lot of SF guys that were professionals, and I had worked with them and had them on my teams, and they worked hard. We had great support from Dr. Downing and the deans. And Paul Cook, I don't know, Paul, if you're here today, but he kept me out of a lot of trouble because I didn't do things quite according to the law of the Army. But we got the people here, and my first general is a dear friend, Joe Smith. Where are you, Joe? Stand up and wave. Stand up. Back there. He always tried to stay in the background, but he was a general officer and our first one, and we produced about 7 out of that class, some other classes. Western had the #1 program in the ROTC world in our region, and there are 4 regions in the U.S. But it was because of my guys that I brought from Bragg, trained them hard. We had the first girls that went into the Army as officers. And they were some of my guys' girlfriends, wives, whatever. They were known as the rebelettes in those days, and they worked for the president as hostesses. And they all were on scholarship. We had super support from Dr. Downing and Paul Cook. And I've never forgotten those people. They made life good. Joe just stood up for you. He was my first general. I call them my generals because they came out of our program. We got 6 of those guys. And some of them are major generals, got a lieutenant general. That's big stuff for one little school. We were not that great in numbers, but we had quality, because I beat them to death if they didn't do what they were supposed to do. And they didn't want to hear my mouth. They did it, and they survived and were good. I left Western, returned to Bragg, took over the Special Forces Training Command there. I was a light colonel, but it was a full bull's job. And I was asked to serve in Venezuela by the Minister of Defense. And after 2 years in that job, I was prepared to stay another year, but my boss lady said, "Hey, buddy boy, my oldest son's going to have a baby boy. I know he's going to be a boy." I said, "How do you know?" She said, "I just know. Mamas know every daggum thing." And we came back, came home, and my daughter-in-law sent us a sonogram. Margaret Ann knew about sonograms. I didn't know much about them, but it shows you, well, you mamas know what they are. And we read that thing, it was going to be a boy. They wanted to send me back into South America. In my day, they had FAOs, foreign area officers, and you had to speak the language. I speak Spanish and some dialects of Spanish the Argentinians liked, and the Brazilians. They weren't quite Spanish. They were, I called it Spanglish. Not a lot of English in it. And when that tour was over, I asked my boss to return me to Kentucky. So he did. He did that as a favor more than anything. But we came back to 2nd Region, which was the region that Western Kentucky's in, and we did a good job. As I said, Joe was our first general officer, and I did a lot of stuff with Coach Fikes, my dear friend. My boys were still at home. They attended Bowling Green High. My grandboy, I'm proud to say, is on 3 state championships. How I got a big center in there, I don't know, because all the rest of those guys were running backs. But he, I think he got my grandpa's genes. He was big man, 6'4", 200 or 310 pounds, I think was his weight. So Parker Man Riggs, he's in college now, and he's doing the same thing as a center. We built our retirement home here in Bowling Green. I lost my wife almost 3 years ago. It's hard. She was my boss, and she kept me organized because I had a little bit of a temper, and I had impatience when my guys didn't do what I told them, but she'd always take care of that by making me sleep on the couch or something. I have a lot of dear friends here in Bowling Green. I have a doctor who's taken care of my Agent Orange for a long time. And I love him to death. I continue to cherish this university on the hilltop. and those who gave me and mine the best years of our lives. Thank you, WKU, and God bless this university and the people who love her.